Welcome to this unique explainer. Today, we're going to take a super fascinating, really focused journey into one of the most compelling aspects of human behavior. As enthusiastic learners, we're always hunting for dense data or complex charts. But honestly, sometimes the absolute best way to understand something profound is to just strip all that away and look at the foundational concepts driving us. Today, we're exploring exactly how deep emotional connections shape our biology and our psychology. For the longest time, the whole conversation around attraction was, well, overwhelmingly focused on the physical. But modern research, it tells a vastly different, far more interesting story. We're talking about a story where trust, intimacy, and mental safety are the true engines of arousal. So we're going to dive right into the data and the psychology to figure out exactly how emotional bonds influence attraction.
Okay, let's dive into this. What really lies behind the psychology of desire? It's the kind of question that instantly captures your curiosity, isn't it? It challenges us right out of the gate to think about the invisible engines that drive what we do. For decades, this specific question absolutely baffled scientists and clinical psychologists. Historically, female desire was heavily misunderstood, or actually scratch that. It was often just largely ignored in clinical settings. Researchers basically tried to force it into the exact same spontaneous, purely biological models that they used to study male desire. And surprise, surprise, when it didn't fit neatly into that little box, they were totally perplexed. But as the field evolved, researchers finally realized that attraction isn't just some simple biological reflex. No, it's deeply rooted in our cognitive and emotional frameworks. Understanding what actually lies behind that desire means we have to completely rethink how the human brain processes connection.
The psychology behind female sexual desire. Every single word in that phrase carries immense academic weight and boundless human experience. Just to give you an idea of that academic weight, we've seen a massive paradigm shift in modern psychology over the last 20 years. The field has completely moved away from viewing desire merely as a spontaneous, always-on biological drive. Instead, researchers now understand it as this highly complex web, one that's heavily influenced by emotional bonds, life context, and psychological safety. We aren't just talking about hormones in a vacuum here. We're talking about how feeling seen, feeling valued, and feeling emotionally secure directly rewires our physical responses. That is the vast landscape we're setting out to explore today. It's the space where the mind and the body seamlessly communicate.
To truly digest this, we need to break it down. We're looking at three distinct thematic pillars: the psychology, female, sexual desire. Our main goal in this explainer is to really reflect on how these elements actually interact in the real world. By breaking this down, we start to see that female and sexual desire literally cannot be fully understood without the psychology, specifically the psychology of emotional intimacy. The building blocks of this premise tell us that context matters immensely. Like, if we were only looking at the physical aspect of sexual desire, we'd be missing way more than half the picture. The psychological component is what actually dictates whether the physical component even has permission to show up. It acts as the ultimate gatekeeper, which is exactly why we have to start our analysis right there, in the mind.
Let's move on and see how this builds. We're going to frame the first phase of our deep dive today exclusively around that core psychological premise. Before we get into the specific subject matter, we have to firmly establish the lens we're looking through. We're stepping right into the realm of cognitive explanations. This includes how the brain processes emotional trust, shared experiences, and vulnerability. And hey, these aren't just abstract, warm and fuzzy concepts. They are empirically proven to trigger biological arousal in many women. In human anatomy, the brain is, quite literally, the largest and most important sex organ. It's true. If a person feels emotionally disconnected, stressed out, or unsupported in their daily life, the brain registers that as a total lack of psychological safety. And what does it do? It effectively slams the brakes on physical desire.
Now, what's really interesting about what we're looking at here is the specific use of the word behind. That single word implies hidden cognitive frameworks that are just operating in the background. So what exactly are those hidden frameworks? Well, a massive one identified by researchers is this concept of responsive desire. Unlike spontaneous desire, which is, just suddenly feeling aroused out of nowhere, responsive desire emerges as a reaction to positive stimuli. And for a lot of women, that primary stimulus is emotional connection. The hidden architecture behind desire often involves the presence of strong emotional bonds, acting as the ultimate accelerator. Conversely, stress, emotional distance, or a lack of intimacy, those form the hidden architecture that can entirely shut it down. To understand the behaviors we see on the surface, we absolutely have to look at the emotional environment operating behind the scenes. Having established our analytical framework, we can point that microscope directly at the nuances of female sexual desire itself. And what this reveals is that desire is definitely not a monolith. It varies wildly from person to person, but a highly consistent through line is the fundamental need for relational context. Just think about your own experiences or your own relationships for a second. How often is physical attraction deeply, deeply tied to how emotionally seen and understood you feel by your partner? When you're on the exact same wavelength with someone, finishing each other's sentences, and just feeling deeply valued, that emotional intimacy often translates directly into physical attraction. It's not just some happy coincidence. It's a fundamental feature of how female sexual desire is frequently constructed and activated.
Isolating this core concept allows us to look directly at the data regarding how emotional bonds actively influence attraction. For instance, psychological studies consistently show that couples who report higher levels of emotional intimacy and, get this, shared domestic responsibilities often report significantly higher levels of sexual desire. There is literally an entire body of research dedicated to how the equitable sharing of chores and the mental load acts as a powerful catalyst for attraction. Why is that? Well, because when a partner steps up and shares the mental burden of daily life, it builds immense emotional trust and safety. It drastically reduces stress and cognitive overload, which actually makes space for desire to flourish. The data tells us loud and clear that feeling supported outside the bedroom is very often the prerequisite for attraction inside it.
So the crucial point here is how these two distinct halves come together. The thematic intersection is that emotional bonds are the very bridge between psychology and physical desire. On one hand, we have the framework of study, psychology. On the other, the subject of inquiry, female sexual desire. Recognizing this specific academic structure matters immensely because it synthesizes our core takeaway for today. Attraction isn't just about what's visually appealing. No way. It is deeply rooted in the psychological safety, the trust, and the emotional resonance established between partners. To really wrap our heads around something as vast as desire, we have to anchor our curiosity right at this intersection, recognizing that our minds and our bodies are constantly collaborating. They are always assessing our emotional environment to determine our level of physical attraction.
We've seen today how desire isn't just a simple biological on-off switch. It's this wonderfully complex emotional landscape where trust, intimacy, and feeling fundamentally understood pave the way for physical attraction. The hidden engines of human behavior are driven by our deep-seated need for connection and safety. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought, derived directly from the essence of our source material today. What truly drives the psychology behind female sexual desire? As you reflect on the incredibly powerful role that emotional bonds play in shaping our physical reality, I really hope you're captivated and eager to independently explore your own psychological engines of desire. Keep asking those big questions.